ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Economic Briefcase on Camnet TV. I'm your host, Luvinda Vazoka. Today with me is my co-host, as usual, Mr. Noah Japao. How has been the week?
Good evening, Doc. The week has been fine. Welcome to the program, viewers. How has been your week?
No, the week has been, I didn't even know how it finished, and I've been told next week we are praying. So we're only working Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. So we might as well get a one-day leave for Monday so that we can have an extended, weekend. They say, oh, work, no play makes
John a dull boy.
Yeah. So today we are discussing, the national budget. We're also looking at the prevailing economic condition in the country. We will be opening the phone lines after, half an hour. You'll be able to interact. You can send us your text messages on the numbers that are below on the screen. Before we introduce to today's guest, we, as per tradition, will rush and see what is happening in the money, capital, and commodities markets. Honorable Japao, over to you.
Thank you, Doc. Let's look at what's been prevailing on the market today, the 13th of October, 2022. The kwacha against the four major currencies. The kwacha closed off selling at 15 kwacha 19 ngwe against the dollar. It closed off selling at 17 kwacha 78 ngwe against the pound. Closed off selling at 15 kwacha 35 ngwe against the euro. Closed off selling at 86 ngwe against the rand. Selected metal prices delayed by a day. Aluminium closed off selling at $2,227. Copper closed off selling at $7,625.50. Zinc closed off selling at $2,972. Lead closed off selling at $2,080. Tin closed off selling at $20,005. Nickel closed off selling at $21,750. Crude oil prices. WTI crude closed off selling at $88.70. Brent crude closed off selling at $93.94. That's all we had today on the market update.
We've seen that the kwacha is slightly, depreciating. What can be the major causes?
One of them is we just closed the quarter, so a lot of companies are doing their financials. There's a little bit pressure on the kwacha. Most of our companies are dollar dominated, so we can attribute it to that, and also partly we've seen that the appreciation was due to market sentiments. And fundamentals were not in support fully, so that could be the reason.
I've seen the oil prices. Do we expect oil crude on the international market to go? I mean, the USA and its allies are talking about, a price cap of about $60. Yellen, I think she's at the Federal Reserve. She's head of the Federal Reserve. Mentioned that they want to cap oil prices to $60 per barrel. President Putin says that is dreamland. They will never sell at dictated prices. We saw a meeting of Asian countries today trying to see how they can. So with all this that is happening, also aluminium, the USA wants to put sanctions on that. So where do we see crude maybe in the coming few months?
Definitely we're going to see a temporary shift, but I don't think it will last. It won't stick, considering what's going on the market, considering what's going on in geopolitics. I don't think this will stick. We can see a temporary change.
Talking about geopolitics and its effect on Zambia's economic development agenda and also the national budget, the economic situation. Today in the studio we have with us an accountant, an accomplished accountant. We have in the studio today the Honorable Member of Parliament responsible or representing, not responsible, representing Lunte, Honorable MUTOTWE KAFWAYA. Honorable, it's a pleasure having you, in the studio today.
Thank you so much, Doc. It's also my pleasure to be hosted by yourself. I must say I watch your programs, very interesting.
And I must say I'm very happy that you have joined us because, it was one short notice. We had you in mind since last week, but I was trying to look at your, movements in Parliament. Yeah. It has been a very busy week.
Yes, it has.
Yes, also of the political arena. I've seen there are a lot of filing-ins going around the country. So thankfully somebody tipped me that you are in Lusaka. Thank you for coming.
Yes, no, you are welcome, Doc. It's indeed my pleasure. Obviously, we've had committee work to do with bills and to do with the expanded budget and planning committee. So and also chamber work. So it's been quite tight, to be honest. So on account of all of these things happening, I was unable to travel. In Lunte itself, there were nominations today. We had one councillor who was employed as a teacher and consequently resigned. So we are having a by-election. So all things being equal, I should have been in Lunte, but on account of...
Okay, but before we lose that, what should we do so that, because I'm seeing you represent the people in a ward, you are basically an MP for your town, and then you are employed as a teacher and you leave. Maybe is it conditions of service? What should we do to improve that for the councillors?
Well, I think a teacher can be a councillor because a councillor is doing that work on a part-time basis. But just yesterday there was a motion on the floor of the House to improve their conditions. So you never know where all this is leading. These changes might imply that they put in more time, so you can't split between formal employment and that part-time work if it becomes so demanding that even your conditions of service are now a subject of conversation at that level. So I think that we need to watch the space and see how it evolves, and then a better determination to speak to the situation as it is, would be found.
Mr. Japa, over to you.
Honorable, it's a pleasure having you on our program today. Thanks for coming. Now, for some of our viewers who might not know who Honorable KAFWAYA is, perhaps you can tell us and the viewers a little bit about Honorable KAFWAYA.
Okay, yes, thank you so much. Doc and my brother here, I'm a member of Parliament for Lunte. I've been a member of Parliament for Lunte since 2016. And in the last Parliament, I was privileged to serve as Minister of First Works and Supply and later Minister of Transport and Communications. Obviously, at the pleasure of His Excellency, the 60th President, Dr. Edgar Chagwa Lungu, to whom I'm very grateful, I think, for the honor to have served the Zambian people at that level. It's a common knowledge that when a few of us came back in 2021, we lost the presidency, so the privilege of continuing as a minister obviously is just about impossible, isn't it? So now I'm serving as an ordinary member of Parliament. In Parliament now, I belong to two committees, the Committee on Reforms and the Committee on the National Economy, which are...
About being an accountant, you fit better in PAC. Yes, like the chair.
I'm probably not the only accountant. So yes, but I am happy to be part of the National Economy Committee, which I'm privileged to chair for this session as well. Before that, where have I been? I think I've worked in the private sector, in the public sector, in the private sector up to the level of chief accountant, but also I was once the Lusaka provincial internal auditor for Central Board of Health.
Okay.
And before that, obviously, I worked for various organizations, small organizations, medium ones. I worked for Finca as a branch accountant in Livingstone. I worked for SEDZAM as well, SEDZAM as a branch accountant in Livingstone, and I worked for Finca here in Lusaka as internal audit manager, Madison Finance as well in that same capacity. So clearly in this accounting and audit, I've been there. I'm SEMA qualified and I'm degreed as well with a bachelor's degree in accounting. Before that I did NATEC. So that was my foundation in this profession. And I have a master's degree. And Doc, remember I was in your class trying to do a PhD.
Yes. How far have you gone?
The second thing, trying.
You know, Doc, politics came and confused me.
Now that I know, I remember that we will push because we have. I know they won't like this, but Honorable Chima is one of us.
Yes, we began quite a big group, and I was determined. But you know, that was before 2016 elections. But when I went into elections, later became minister, it was just impossible to, you know, I couldn't put it together. So I kind of abandoned it. But, well, I may try to come back. Let's see how things work out. And I also have a grade 12 certificate. I do have a grade 12 certificate, so yeah, so I'm comfortable. I don't think I'll have that challenge. Yeah.
So the Honorable Minister responsible for finance announced the budget for 2023.
Yes.
And you are currently debating it.
Yes.
Which one should we start with? Should we start with this budget, or maybe you can tell us the performance of this year's budget up to today? What are the strengths, the weaknesses?
Well, thank you, Doc. I think the minister himself began by boasting in paragraph 4. It's very early in his address. He says there is now budget credibility. Okay? In simple terms, this means that government is now spending in accordance with what Parliament approves, with only minimal deviations. That is a minister speaking. And obviously, budget credibility is about planning and executing in line with the plan. A few months ago, maybe 2 months or so, the minister brought 22 billion kwacha to the House. Supplementary budget. What is the percentage of 22 on the 172, which was the initial budget? That's a huge percentage, about 10%. So how do you bring a supplementary of 10% and call it credibility? But maybe for a person like yourself, Doc, and my brother here, it's easy to understand. Let's make it more simpler. What is budget credibility with no drugs in hospitals? So the minister should tell us that the Ministry of Health didn't plan properly. Because it's saying, I have funded the Ministry of Health in line with their plan. That's budget credibility. So what is the problem? Why isn't there insulin in Kalabo? Why don't we have, all these common drugs for malaria in clinics across the country? So for me, I don't see the credibility. I do not see it.
I hear it was attributed to proper public financial management, hence the supplementary budget was presented.
How do you expand your fiscal deficit by proper application of proper financial management? I think that, look, the minister expanded his fiscal deficit, isn't it? As you can see, even in his budget, in this particular address, the minister's target is 7.7%. But in this same book, if you go to his resource envelope and you find where he's written financing 53.9, that is he's saying 10% share of GDP. So how is this 7%?
So it means that government plans to borrow 10%.
10% according to this. But if you make simple calculations, you'll be shocked that this is actually not a percentage. You know, the minister is saying his total budget, 167.3, is 31.4% of the economy, GDP, isn't it? Mm-hmm. It is therefore easy to find what the GDP is. I made the calculations, and then I went and applied the 7.7. It didn't give me this number. So you have 3 percentages in one budget, which began with boasting on credibility. Okay, so I have a problem with these political pronouncements. I think somewhere somebody put it very accurately that this government is good at making, you know, political pronouncements, even in very official documents like a national budget. Frankly speaking, I am disappointed with what the minister said when you compare to what is happening on the ground. In his address last year, the minister was specific. He was going to have 1 million people benefit from FISIP. In this one, he just says FISIP will continue. No number placed to it. For this particular one, where we are being told, like in my constituents, people are calling me every day, telling me that no, we are only going to get 2 bags of fertilizer, you know, one of each type. So we have a situation now where we don't even know whether the reduction in numbers of bags also will follow the reduction in the beneficiaries. But in this particular one, the current one, he doesn't even put the number there. Did you listen to him?
The amount allocated to the replacement of FISIP has slightly
comprehensive agriculture program,
yes,
development, they call it.
Has actually gone up from about 5 to about 9.
Yes, because look, FISIP was about inputs. FISIP is about inputs, but in there they are talking about comprehensive agriculture support. They are talking about dams, they are talking about irrigation, they are talking about inputs, they are talking about all of these things, including you know, livestock support. They are talking about extension support, extension services support. So that mix is just there in order to confuse the public, so that it's very difficult for the public to keep the government to account in terms of their specific promises and what it would turn out to be at the end of 2023. That's how I see it.
Okay, so looking at the debt, how much has been allocated to debt service for the current one, and how much was allocated to debt service in the current, the proposed one and the current budget?
Yeah.
What are your comments on that? Because there's a little bit of a reduction in how much has been allocated for 2023 in terms of debt service.
Well, I think it's justifiable if they are talking about restructuring the debt, because when they do achieve the restructuring, what they are trying to look at is to extend the maturity of what would have matured perhaps in this coming year. They are talking about, you know, reducing the installments for what is existing. So if you restructure, you can end up with a lower allocation for repayments. So that is not surprising. But what is important for me is how much more are they going to borrow, isn't it? To add to the burden. Yesterday we were discussing this book in the assembly, the annual borrowing plan. And I got shocked when I read something on page 10 on this plan, you know, where the minister has said the total maturities on domestic debt in 2023 are projected at 63.2 billion, while total issuances are projected at 78.3 billion, resulting in a net domestic borrowing of 15.6. Okay, now this 15.6 is actually what he put in his budget here. I came with these books just to ensure that domestic financing is 15.5 billion, where 15.57, which is 15.6, isn't it? So the minister has taken the net figure between what is sitting on their books now and what he projects to borrow in 2023. And he says, this will constitute my domestic borrowing. The minister is going to borrow.
So you mean the 15 is not supposed to be 15?
It's supposed to be 78 billion. This is what he's going to borrow. I challenged the acting Minister of Finance yesterday and said, what standards are you using to net off an existing obligation with a planned obligation? Okay.
So in the borrowing plan, government plans to borrow
78.8.
But in the budget, for both the domestic and
no, this is for domestic only.
That's for domestic
this
only.
This is for domestic. 78 billion is just for domestic.
But in the big budget, both domestic and foreign is at 53.
It's at 53. Okay. And the reason they have put 15 here is because they think on the current stock, they are going to pay, these are maturities which can even be extended anyway, because you never know. They are going to net off 63.3 billion. So you discover that our colleagues are very good at propaganda. But unfortunately, the level of propaganda now has been heightened so much that it's gone to these national official documents. It's very, very unfortunate. Doc, I asked you simple questions the other day. I appeared on one platform and says, look, we, at a global level, we have what are those, the Sustainable Development Goals. And at the regional level, we have Agenda 2063, right? And then at a national level, it's come down to the Vision 2030. But how do we achieve the Vision 2030? What ladder do we climb to achieve that? In our own country, it is through the development plans, isn't it?
Yes.
And now, this is the book that is at play. 2022 to 2026, 8th National Development Plan.
So for the 8th National Development Plan and the proposed budget,
yeah,
are they in sync?
I can quickly show you what is in here. And the sad part, Doc, is that this book was actually approved in this year, this few months ago. Okay? And then you have the expenditure. Remember that this budget address for 2022 is tying in, because this book was created after that budget speech.
Yes.
And then they brought this one. We are supposed to be at 177.6 billion. The minister reduced the budget to 167. It is lower than last year's projected budget, and the actual budget, I hope it doesn't bring another supplementary, because let's remember we are still in 2022. So right now for the budget of 2022, we are standing at 192 billion. That is 172 plus the 22 billion supplementary budget. If he brings another supplementary, which is likely, it will even become more. But he has reduced his spending, his proposed spending, to 167, far lower than what it is now, and also lower than what is in the 8th National Development Plan. My question is, what objectives in here for 2023 have been removed? Because people need to know. If you are going to spend less, there are certain objectives that you've put aside. Which ones are they? The minister didn't tell us. Okay. So I have a huge problem with these pronouncements from the minister, and I thoroughly agree with the notion that these are just political pronouncements.
Coming to the mining sector, we saw that there's some adjustment that has been done to mineral royalty tax. What do you think the impact will have to the miner, to the country?
Doc, in last year's address relating to the current budget, the minister made MRT deductible for tax purposes. And we know what that means. It means that the small profits which the mines would declare will be swept or wiped out by just that one component of a deductible item of MRT. So the reason the minister did that was to ensure that the mining corporations pay no tax at all, no income tax at all. Okay? But what he has done now, he has now realized that the mining corporations can benefit from other innovative accounting methods, transfer pricing and others, so they can easily find a way of reducing their profits. So instead of just leaving it the way it was, he has now reduced even the MRT. Okay, in how many ways? In 2 ways. First, the first band, which was at 5.5, has been reduced to 4%. Okay, and then he's removed one band in between, and he has made the taxation regime incremental. That means that now MRT will be taxed like pay as you earn, isn't it? To reduce the actual output after computed, now the number will become small. Okay, so Zambia, which was getting a decent amount in terms of MRT, will get a smaller MRT, and that amount is even deductible, meaning that the mining corporations now will simply pay nothing to the state. So you have a big problem. The minister will lose, I think, about 8 billion kwacha, from the mines. But he's going to borrow. He's going to borrow over 1.2 foreign borrowing, which he can easily raise, from the taxes from the mines. And unfortunately, when he borrows, if you look at where he's going to take the money, Doc, and this is what hurts me the most. The government wants to construct an interconnector with Tanzania, so that part of the electricity which is generated in Zambia can be exported to Tanzania. Now, how do you prioritize exporting power to Tanzania when there are so many Zambians who are not connected? Here in Lusaka, how many people are not connected to power? Even though we are saying we have a surplus. What surplus are you talking about? How many villages are not connected in northern province, in western and southern provinces? So many people are not connected to power. And then you are saying the little that is over and above what the current people connected use should be exported. And for us to facilitate that export, we need to borrow in order to construct capital for that to happen. This is why I'm saying, you PNG government, reduce your focus on foreigners. For once, start looking at the people who put you in office. I think it's very important. Go and connect all of the Zambian people who have made applications and have paid for those applications, isn't it? Go and connect all the villages out there before you can begin to think about exporting this power. I think that is my submission.
Coming to the agriculture sector,
yeah,
you briefly touched on FISP.
Yes.
The government has extended FISP to extension services. There's some farm blocks that are going to be built. So what do you think the Zambian farmer watching there, what should they expect in terms of fertilizers and these other things?
Well, Doc, I've received calls already from my constituents. People are already complaining that instead of 6 bags of fertilizer, they are receiving 2. Okay, that's what I have been told by my people in the constituents. I don't know what's the situation in other constituencies, but if what I've been informed is anything to go by, this agricultural season is a waste, and we are going to we are going to be in deficit. There's no question, because people won't be able to farm. People need to be supported, and this is where we must direct our effort. Our faculties need to be directed towards producing, particularly food first, so that we can keep our people, healthy. People can't be hungry, and there's even no medicine in hospitals. It would be chaotic. So my sense is that we need to make sure our people receive fertilizer. The minimum is what they used to receive. Give them at least six bags. They are used to that. If you did that, we are likely going to get a harvest similar to what we've been getting in the past. But if you do reduce, then we are in trouble as a nation. And if you are really going to reduce without notice, people prepared, these fields according to their expectation. And by the way, the UPND was promising even cheaper fertilizer. So for those who are not on FISIP, for those who are not supported by the government in that fashion, we are expecting to buy fertilizer cheaply, isn't it? But now, it's more expensive than it was. It's more expensive than the promise of 250 kwacha per bag, and more expensive than it was. So it's a huge problem. Government just needs to direct its effort towards ensuring that our people do get reasonable fertilizer.
So, Honorable, when it comes to taxes, there are a couple of things that were announced. I think incentives on certain products such as cassava, product made out of cassava. There were those incentives in that in that regard towards such products, and as well there was also an announcement on the VAT, the excess duty and VAT on petroleum products, and also the tax band on pay-as-you-earn was increased to about 4,800 from 4,500. So these 3 things, what are your comments on these?
Yeah, thank you so much. I think I'll start with the fuel issue, the thorny issue for all of us. I think our people are going to suffer more. There's no question about that, because fuel, it was already expensive. Let's remember that when fuel was at 17 kwacha, the current president said it was supposed to be at 12 kwacha. And the many people who went to vote for him thought that the moment he assumed office, fuel was going to be reduced to 12 kwacha per liter. What has happened is that the moment he became president, fuel jumped. You remember it reached 28 kwacha, started coming downwards, and so on. Today we are talking about 26 kwacha thereabout, isn't it? So with this removal of waivers, we will have a situation where now fuel is going to be stable at that very high cost of 26 kwacha plus per liter. So our people now will have to pay more on transportation. Transportation of all of these things we're talking about, including fertilizer, making it more expensive and more difficult to access by the poor farmers, who are now calling us and saying, well, I can only get 2 bags of fertilizer. Okay, so that's a huge problem. And then when you look at the pay-as-you-earn.
Well, before you go to pay as you earn, sorry to cut you short, there's a pipeline that's being proposed to be built from Namibia to to Zambia, I think about 2,000 kilometers pipeline. Won't that have an effect on...
the fuel which will be transported by that pipeline, first of all, we will not have the waivers that existed. That's the first thing. So the market price will still be in effect. Okay, there would be no support towards the poor people. Secondly, I think that is more like a story in the mining industry, where we are being told these incentives are to ensure that we grow production to 3 million tons per annum in 10 years' time. You understand? So if you are looking at an investment that is only going to yield benefits in 10 years' time, what will happen between now and that time when people are suffering? So for me, I expected this address to be talking about steps that would be taken and how many people will be taken out of poverty, how many people will gain employment as a result of these measures. But if you be telling me the only time Zambia will benefit from these incentives we are giving now will be in 10 years' time, it's very difficult. I'll find it very difficult to explain to the people in our compounds. I'll find it very difficult to explain to our people in Lunte. What I want is more money, to go to agriculture, so that immediately the people of Lunte can be impacted. Immediately, food prices can come down if our agriculture sector performs well. That will ensure that our people suffering, begin to reduce. So, unfortunately, did the minister say when that pipeline will be built? Did the minister say for how long? Even when it's going to start, the construction will start, and for how long? He didn't. But I've heard about the Tazama pipeline and how it's going now to start carrying, finished products. Okay. When you look at that pipeline from Dar es Salaam into Ndola, it's a long pipeline, over 1,600 kilometers, isn't it? Now, if you have such a pipeline carrying petrol, for example, or even diesel, and everyone along the pipeline, this is diesel, which you can just
we have the case of Nigeria, where a pipe was connected to the main pipeline, and Vigo pipeline, and it has been running for 9 years.
Can you imagine that? So, Doc, you are aware this is diesel.
Yes.
And that pipeline is passing through the bush. There are no people, and not everybody thinks like an economist. Not everybody is a responsible citizen, and we're talking about two countries, isn't it? What are you doing? The reason, I think, part of the reason why that pipeline, carried commingled, was that you won't use it. It will require separation, isn't it? It will require separation. So I have a huge problem. Now, if the concept on the Tazama pipeline is that it's going to be carrying finished products, is that the same with the Angola pipeline? What are the risks? How do you manage those risks? How do you ensure security? It's a huge problem we are dealing with, and I think government must begin to think critically. I think the few days I sat before the doc here in his orientation class, we learned that you needed to apply some critical thinking, and it is at a time such as this, when people are suffering, when you need people who should think and be able to produce deliverables that can speak to the realities. This budget speech was given, in my own opinion, in the context of very high poverty. We have very high poverty right now, in the context of very high cost of living for the greater majority of the Zambian people. In the context of very high unemployment. So my expectation was that all of the measures that were being spoken to should be talking about how people are going to be lifted out of poverty, how employment was going to be created.
It mentioned on how many people are going to be employed in the health sector and I think the defense.
I love it. We welcome the employment in the health sector and the education sector. Let our children be taught. Let those colleagues of ours go and serve people in the health sector. I hope there will be medicine. Okay, but what those will be doing is to eat into the budget and not to create the economy, which is needed to stimulate, employment creation and wealth creation. So, while it is welcome, it is going to put pressure on a government which is, in a sense, not so concerned about the Zambian people. Do you know that in this speech the minister said he's going to create some roads via PPP, yes, including the Lusaka and Ndola? Do you know what the minister would be doing to your little income coming out of this road? It's going to go into private individuals. That's basically what he's telling you. From here into Solwezi, all that income will go into the hands of a private individual or private companies. And what is he doing to his already bad fiscal deficit? He's expanding it. Okay, he's going to expand it. This budget will not be financed because part of the non-tax revenue is coming from those toll fees. So is it your doc who taught us the conceptualization?
let me bring in a little. You spoke on PPPs. Is there a better way? In fact, the PPP can be done where it's negotiated nicely, yeah, between the government and the private sector, yeah, or is there any other alternative that can be used?
Well, I think PF built roads with, outright borrowing. Mm-hmm. That's an alternative. And let's be clear, UPND is borrowing. This is why there is this plan. The only thing is that UPND has not prioritized roads. Okay? If they did, they could have borrowed and built roads. Okay? And then this budget will be financed in a number of ways. One of the ways is the taxation, non-tax revenue. Mm-hmm. Okay, if UPND wants, they can finance a road outside of borrowing, outside of PPP, by the use of tax and non-tax revenue. The only problem is UPND has not prioritized those roads to be funded by the Zambian people. What they want is to give business opportunities to foreigners, as they are doing in the mining sector, as they are also preferring to take power to Tanzania, when in fact in their own country there are so many people who are unsaved. So it's a huge problem, as I say it.
You're watching Economic Briefcase on Camnet TV. We are now opening up the phone lines. You can call us on the numbers that are appearing on the screen. You can also write your comment on our Facebook page. I keep on checking my phone because I'm reading what you are writing. You can also send text messages on the numbers that are appearing below the screen. Director, let's check some messages, if any. Good evening. Learning and knowing more about governance. Thank you for sharing and opening my mind. Honorable, 1, is there no way our country and government can run the nation without borrowing? 2, why can't we do away with CDF to clear the debt? After it's even difficult to access the CDF funds for some of us. I'm Jovial MTL from Muila Village. So can we develop without borrowing? And I can see they're saying CDF.
Yes. I think those are important questions. Is there a way we can run our country? In other words, is there a way we can finance the budget without borrowing? I think most countries do borrow, as far as I know. Most, if not all countries. But the thing is that when you borrow, you must direct the borrowing in areas which are able, to pay back. in other words, to stimulate the economic environment as to be able to facilitate creation of wealth, creation of jobs, and so on. And partly this is why I like PF, because if you think of the borrowing during PF, you are going to immediately see the communication towers. In my constituency, you will see them in most constituencies across the country. You will see hospitals and roads. So these are facilitators. They facilitate the economic performance of the nation, and that's what I expect. But I don't want a borrowing to do an interconnect in order to facilitate the transfer of power from my country, which is not 100% saved, which is less than 50% saved. I don't want to see that. What I want is all of the power produced must be utilized here so that there are more people who have access to it, more people who are using it to, to facilitate production. This is what I want. But yes, if you don't want to borrow, maybe for our country, your budget is going to be so small, and you might just end up directing all of the expenditure towards service, towards the service sectors. CDF, why don't we just do away with it and pay the debt? Unfortunately, the whole amount of CDF, which is just about 4.4 billion, in the 2023 budget, won't pay our debt. And by the way, this debt won't be paid in the same year because it's got different maturities and so on. And you can't abrogate the contractual obligations, so you have to, to adhere to the agreements that will have been signed. So I don't see that, but maybe why don't we reduce it in order to facilitate other developmental programs? Why don't we increase it in order to ensure that there is impact? But also CDF in equal numbers in all constituencies is actually entrenching inequality, as you may easily deduce, Doc, because our conditions are not the same. 28.3 million kwacha in Lunte may not be the same as 28.3 in Matero, for example. So giving equally is actually entrenching inequality. And sadly, for a government that has been preaching, The other thing is this. Take Monze, for example. Monze is a very small district. It's just like Lund. It's got 3 constituencies. Okay? And Lunte has got 1 constituency. Do you see that? So if you take this money per constituency, which district will develop faster? So it's one way also of entrenching inequality. And it should be easy to see.
Talking about the economy in general,
yeah.
What do you think is the current performance of the economy, and what should we expect going forward?
Doc, thank you so much. I think the economy for me is indicators. Some of the indicators have stabilized, okay, but they may be suspicious, okay. Some of these indicators may be suspicious, and you have to dig a little more. Inflation, which came down, so rapidly and settled in a single digit. What has changed to cause that inflation to come down so rapidly and come and settle down? I have a huge problem, because we had COVID when people were not trading literally. Inflation was going up. Inflation was going up. Now, COVID, given COVID, we are not wearing masks anymore. COVID restrictions have been loosened. We expect people to be, businessmen and women to be moving up and down. This is when inflation comes down. So I'm sorry, I have a problem, but I'm not an economist. So I can't speak to the integrity of the number or the numbers. What I do hope is that it has been properly affected by the fundamentals. But what are those fundamentals? Maybe it's because local contractors are perceived to be PF supporters and they are not being paid. Maybe because contracts are being cancelled. You can't supply medicine to government now if you were supplying when PF was in office. Maybe those are the reasons, but we have to inquire into that. We really have to inquire into that. When UPND assumed office, SDR was already achieved. The money was already with Bank of Zambia. What has happened? Is it because of these incentives?
So we have the first caller. Your name and where you calling from?
Mkandawire calling from Luwansha.
Mulishana Mkandawire.
Ndike hilo na Mulishani.
Utafile chila pahwadi.
Chila pahwadi. Yeah. No, this program is very educative. Now I just want to comment perhaps on the increase of even CDF in the budget. I should have thought maybe some right that would it be a good idea to divide this CDF in constituencies using a population so that we are really proportionally. Would that be a good idea? So that is one question. And the other thing that I wanted to take note, which is the third thing, where it has been explained there that the man is actually, be almost saying nothing is not nothing really. So I think that is, we are getting suspicious now. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
I think there are two questions there. The CDF being designed according to population and the reforms, the tax reforms on the mines that were proposed.
Yeah.
So I'm sure you want to hear your comment on those. Why can CDF be designed according to population?
I think this conversation of CDF could easily be understood by Mr. Mkandawire, and I wish to thank him as well for his involvement in this program. If we took it to the Copper Belt, okay, he's in Luwansha. Luwansha has got two constituencies, okay, so Luwansha will receive 28.3 by two constituencies, isn't it? Mm-hmm. But just neighboring Luwansha there is Kalulushi. Kalulushi from Chivuluma into Kalulushi into Chanbish. All that area is just one constituency. So you have a situation where so much is going in this place and so much is going in the other. But maybe if you look at population, it might just be the same. So you have this problem. I think a study, because this is a government program. CDF is government money. It's money for the people of Zambia. I think a study to understand the factors that should be influenced in each particular locality ought to be undertaken, and then you provide resources to respond to the situation on the ground. That would be my recommendation. You can't be so arbitrary. You can't be just because some of the mine owners are your friends, you go and give them incentives endlessly. That's being arbitrary. You know, that's being arbitrary. You can't run a country like that. So when CDF was just pocket money for the MP to sort out, you know, problems instantly in the constituency, it was okay. Okay, it was okay. But 25.7 million cannot be pocket money for anyone. You understand? This is a significant amount of money. You need a proper system. You need this money to be targeting development, and this development can only be determined by, you know, a much more you know, formalized study. So let's go towards answering, you know, questions that have been inquired into. Otherwise, you have a problem. And obviously, Mr. Mkandawire makes a comment on the mines. Okay, we discussed here. My lamentation is that these concessions for the mines are endless, and you cannot do that, because all of the people who are mining copper in this country are non-Zambians. So why so much focus on Zambians or on non-Zambians, when in fact you can support Zambians? The minister talked about, you know, small scale.
Sorry, we have another caller. Your name and where you calling from?
My name is Bamba. I'm calling the minister.
Yes, good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Joe, and
Good evening.
I want to contribute something. The very thing that we are talking about, the CDF, what's the only thing about CDF? Because I can see that CDF won't change anything in this country. That I think so. I have seen a lot of cooperative that have been formed. Imagine there are 40 people in the cooperative, they give them $40,000. That is the management team to the community. But if you are going to take the 1,000, 2,000, or if they are said, everyone will get the 10,000, how are they going to do it? What are they going to do with 10,000? Looking at the things that yesterday I saw a woman. They were given to Mutotwe, they were given $40,000. And it was saying what just the business. They are about the food business. If that management is put out that how much is food, how much they don't have a farm where they're going to, you know, to their people. How is that not going to impact the community? So CDF, for me, is something that is going to be down. Look at this. How many grants does CDF do? What is CDF going to do in the 27 million? How much is the credit, the 5 kilometers of credit? Do you think the road can be constructed using CDF? No. That's absolutely no. There are two levels of place with this government. One thing that the government has never realized. Construction is the destroyer of Zambia. If you look at the people in the compound, many people in the compound are carpenters, few people, bricklayers. These people don't have anyone to work. How are they going to benefit using the CDF? Because it is aligned to the Muslim supporters. So this thing.
Yes, I think we have lost that caller.
Yeah.
I think he said what he had to say. He had to say, he put his point across.
Yeah.
I think basically it's just about this, the CDF and its allocation, how it's being allocated.
Yeah, I mean, you see, the CDF is highly talked about. Can I just remind you that when the president addressed the nation through the National Assembly, he said that by the end of 2023, no child will sit on the floor because desks are going to be procured in all schools using CDF. Okay? During the same address, that is of the president, under good governance, the president said they are taking power to the localities, that is in our constituencies, for our people to participate in decision making. This is why CDF has been pumped into constituencies so that the people there can participate in making their decisions and determining their own destiny. Now, the president has already directed that desks must be bought using CDF. But he expects our people to take their own decisions. So what if the decisions that people take have got nothing to do with procurement of desks? Okay? How is that going to be? How is his directive or his expectation of having no one sitting on the floor going to be achieved at the end of 2023? So to a very large extent, CDF is a political tool. The other thing is the minister in his recent address, the budget address for 2023 says SMEs will benefit from CDF. Now I ask a question, what law ensures that only small and medium enterprises should benefit from CDF? There's no law. Because when you advertise a project, any company which is in that particular field can actually bid, isn't it? And when you evaluate the bid, you are going to take or award a company which actually is the best bidder. So there is absolutely no law which is going to say all projects in Lunte constituency should be undertaken by MSMEs which are resident in that in that particular constituency, as the president put it when he graced the Okusefia Pangwena. He was saying, bricklayers here should be able to build structures using CDF. Here in Malole constituency, you understand? You have to get a local. Which procurement law? So, and this is where you have a problem, where the president thinks it must be done in a particular way, when in fact that way is not supported by the law. So first of all, amend the laws. Give the people the laws which you think will facilitate your imagination. In the absence of that, it is virtually impossible to achieve all of these things. Look at the motor vehicles for CDF projects, for example. Where are they being procured? Isn't it at ministry headquarters? They are being procured at local government ministry headquarters. From which company? A very big company which sells the motor vehicles. So how then can you say SMEs have been catered in CDF?
So you spoke about procurement. In the budget, there's a part that says there will be amendment in the public financial management when it comes to the ZPPA Act and the others. We will see such amendments as to let the CDF money and the constituency itself decide on their procurement process.
I think let's not confuse people. The thing is this, let's make pronouncements that are within the law. Okay? The law must be seen as it is, and it must be applied as it is. And if you are making a pronouncement, yes, if you are making a pronouncement at presidential level, at minister level, what you do is that you make a pronouncement in line with the law. But if you find that the existing law is not able to support your agenda, the executive is at liberty to amend that law. Let's also be clear. The executive makes laws and amends laws. They are the ones who do all those things. What the National Assembly does is to just enact, isn't it? Those bills come from cabinet. So it is a responsibility of the president to make adjustments to the laws in such a manner that they would be able to support his intentions for the nation. But to come and, this is politicking, you can't come and say, no, you are going to get all these things from CDF when there's no law that is ensuring that that target group is the only group which can actually, tap into this.
Director, let's check some messages. Good evening, panelists. The economic development agenda has not impacted positively. This is due to bottlenecks in the disbursement of CDF to deserving stakeholders. Suppliers and contractors are not being paid by the mines on the copper belt, coupled with externalization of money by big foreign companies. John Sichangwa in Kitwe. Good evening, Honorable. You don't want to see an interconnector. Again, you are saying it's better to borrow in order to stimulate the economy. Are you saying the interconnector is not realizable in terms of income? Regards, Fred CM. Evening, Doc, Honorable KAFWAYA and Mr. Japao. UPND has failed us in the construction industry. Construction is a major employer of skilled manpower. Carpenters, bricklayers, and steel fixers. All these people are unemployed. Mr. HH must open up the economy to Achula, Muva, Lusaka. That animal called CDF and formation of cooperatives and clubs in Inan Starter. Socialist Party, please take up 2026 Chongo in Indola. Honorable, thanks for your clarification to the current state of the economy. We want you to prevail over the happenings in the Mpongwe.
The Mpongo constituency?
In the Mpongwe constituency, what?
Imagine cutting.
Honorable, thanks for your clarification to the current state of our economy. We want you to prevail over the happenings in Mpongwe constituency. Imagine cutting 2,000 FISIP. What's that?
Packs.
Packs?
Yeah.
Increasing benefiting cooperatives is surely not unthinkable. We do not know how many bags each farmer will receive. We strongly believe this government is playing on farmers. At our request is to bring Mpongwe MP on air to explain this happening. Evening, Honorable, why can't the government remove the distribution of fertilizer in order to reduce debt when borrowing? Instead, the government to supply and reduce the price. So the CDF thing is, CDF is a big issue and the fertilizer. It's true that people are not going to receive, they have been removed from receiving. I personally received a phone call a month ago, and I thought it was a joke, where close relatives of mine said they needed money to buy because they have been removed from FISIP despite the fact that they had paid. They asked for the voter's card and all those things. Do you have a computer as a cooperative? If you don't have, things like that. So I thought it was a joke until now it continues. So, your comments.
Yeah, thank you, Doc. I think these are the things which are affecting people. If UPND wants to continue pretending that it's a listening government, let them listen to those comments. Those are real comments coming from real people who are affected by their mismanagement of the country. So my advice to the UPND is that listen to the people. You can't change things, for the worse. You need to change things for the better. There are several mistakes which PF made, which we made in the PF when we were in government. Those mistakes should not exist now. People should be talking about new mistakes, isn't it? People will say, oh, I think these are new mistakes, we can give UPND time to learn and so on. But to go and touch where life is, agriculture for poor farmers, And look, our soils are so used now to these chemicals, and to just deny people this fertilizer, it's a huge problem. I think UPND must listen. UPND should U-turn and do the FISIP, maybe for this year, if they want to modify the way this program is managed, maybe for this year, use the previous method so that you don't make mistakes, and then start modifying it well in advance, so that you are able to, to put through a program that is going to work for the Zambian people. Those complaints for me are serious and must be addressed. But one colleague talked about the interconnect. Okay.
Yes.
Look, I have no problem with trading with, our neighbors. I have no problem whatsoever. But I'm not going to provide for a neighbor when my own children are not full. They are not satisfied. If we told them that I'm satisfied.
Even when there's a huge return on investment.
That investment you are talking about is to what end? If I can't be concerned with my people, it's to what end? What I want is my people to be able to generate wealth out of the investments of the Zambian people. But you want other people in other countries to generate wealth out of the borrowing which happened in PF, the borrowing which Zambians will be paying back. You understand? It is the same taxpayers. It is you, Doc, and my colleague here who will be paying back that investment in KAFWAYA, isn't it? It's producing power, which power will be exported to other people. So that is where I have a problem.
I received a message on WhatsApp asking what can you politicians do to help local media houses. Of course, with COVID, companies are not producing, so they're not getting enough adverts and what. Other companies have been empowered. What is it need for the media houses? Two, you've heard bricklayers. That is not a small problem.
No,
because I know that's where the majority of our men and women are employed.
Yeah.
The construction sector.
The informal sector is actually very large.
It's very large, yes. What needs to be done?
Look, Doc, I think here we are, trying to share our perspective on these matters of national significance. What is at play here is media, isn't it? Mm-hmm. So I think no responsible leader would want media to die. You want to have a platform to communicate with the people you lead, whether that communication is just formalities like the National Budget Address or the official opening of the National Assembly and so on, or whether it's technical matters, the things you discuss in the Economic Association of Zambia. We want people to be aware, isn't it? But to do this, there is infrastructure. There are structures. All of those need to be resourced. But if your people can't resource those mechanisms because of the problems of COVID and other issues, it is a responsibility of government to perceive that problem and be able to handle it. One way in which that can be handled is making provisions in the budget like the one under discussion now and direct it towards this sector so that this sector can tap into it. You can create incentives similar to the ones you have created for mines. You can ask these people who are in this industry not to pay taxes for 1 year like you are doing for the mining corporations, because after all, this industry, what it's doing is that it is helping you to govern the nation, isn't it? So there are so many ways in which you can provide reliefs for for the sector. For the construction industry, I think for that industry to boom, there just has to be business generally in the nation. People must have wealth. Building a house is sufficient business for somebody out there, isn't it? A small house, basic 3-bedroom house, it can attract employment for somebody out there, bricklayer, say plumber, and so on. But if the economic stimulation is so significant, you have a situation where people will be building office blocks, they'll be building bridges, they'll be doing all these, technically advanced constructions, and you have so many skills put through in those projects. So clearly, the economy is important, but this economy of targets that are not tested is a problem. Doc, the thing is that at what level of employment are we right now? That's an important question to ask before you start crafting a budget. So that you know, at the end of the application of this budget, at what level of employment do you want to be? So you have to compute the recessionary GDP gap. It's absent in this, in this standardized budget address. So in the absence of that recessionary GDP gap, you don't know where you are going. Is that target of growth 3%, 3 to 4% going to, to expand that economy to an extent where you bridge the entire recessionary gap? Maybe the answer is no. If it is no, then what are you trying to achieve? So it's a big problem. You can't determine what wealth you want to create for your people. You can't determine how many jobs you want to create for your people. You can't determine how many people you want out of poverty. You can't. All you are doing is politicking. So it's a big problem as far as I see it.
As we wind up, Director, let's pick the last messages so that nobody feels sidelined, if we have any. Any last messages? I think our director wants to exit. It was a pleasure having you in this program. I think that we need more time with you. I would have kept you an hour more, but you need to go home. Tomorrow you have an important session of Parliament in the morning.
Absolutely.
So I think we invite you to come more, because we want now to discuss you as a person. We know you have intentions to govern the country at one point, and I'm sure people have seen from what they have heard. You're up to the task. So maybe next time when we invite you, we'll discuss maybe in general the economy and how Zambia can achieve improvements in various sectors of the economy. Before I say bye-bye, maybe your last remarks, what you want to advise the viewers or government, or what you hope to see.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Habazoka. I have to thank you for inviting me. I think our interaction was important, perhaps to me much more than yourself, because you are always here. And let me say thank you to all our viewers this evening, and especially to those who took part. I think in a democracy, this is how it should be. We should all be free to have conversations around things which matter to us. To the UPND government, my strong recommendation is that focus on the Zambian people much more than other people, because the Zambian people are the ones who have you where you are. If you focus on foreigners, like I'm perceiving right now, the Zambian people may decide not to keep you in office, and you're going to lose the privilege of governing the nation.
Mr. Japan?
I would just like to thank the Honorable for making time and appearing on the program. Definitely we should have you again. It has been an insightful and educative session. Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much.
You are watching Economic Briefcase on Camnet TV. Join us next week as we bring you other topics of economic importance. Continue watching today with me, with you. Today our guest was Honorable KAFWAYA, Honorable Member of Parliament representing Lunte constituency. My co-host Noah Njapao, myself, Lubinda Habazoka. Thank you very much for joining us. You can continue discussing the topic on Facebook. We're also live on YouTube. Continue watching Camnet TV, because Camnet TV is not just another channel. Bye-bye.